You've said the key word. It's looking at your customers as an investment versus looking at your customers as a cost. And that's, what most companies look at they don't look at their customers as an investment.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Workergenix Mastermind. I have special guest Deborah Myers, who's the CEO of VirtuArte, a specialty gift company that helps business owners improve their relationships with their clients with amazing gifts sourced from around the world. Welcome to the Mastermind, Deborah.
Thank you, Harley. I really appreciate you inviting me.
So tell us kind of how you got started with VirtuArte. Like, what was the story leading up to this business?
Before I started VirtuArte, I was in a couple of multinational corporations, all doing international work in developing countries. So I was given the opportunity to travel, and I found early in my career that I absolutely love to travel, and that's a whole nother conversation that we can have. But every time I went someplace, I always took the opportunity to look for handcrafted or things that were being made by local artisans. I wanted to find unique, interesting things either for myself or for gifts. And then I wanted to learn about the artists or artisans who were making them and how they learned their skills, whether they were passed down from generation to generation or there was some other influence in their life that got them started on that particular craft. Then it was also important for me to understand how those skills or traditions fit into their culture and what that meant. So when I decided to leave the corporate world, I decided that I really wanted to help artisans in countries that most people don't travel to. When people think about traveling internationally, they usually think about going to Europe, maybe, the Caribbean, maybe Mexico. But I found as I was traveling that there was just so many beautifully crafted items that I really wanted to help the artisans get them out so that people who either didn't travel at all or who traveled but didn't, as I said, travel to the locations where I did, would get the opportunity to see them. So that's how I started. So I started out importing, the handcrafted jewelry, fashion accessories, and home and office decor items.
That love of travel is so true. And, some of you may know that are watching, my wife and I are planning on living abroad next year. And so often, like you mentioned, when we tell people, oh yeah, we're going to be abroad, they're like, oh, you're going to Europe. It's like, no, there's a whole other world out there that besides Europe of amazing countries where people have amazing crafts and cultures that, can still benefit us here in the US and appreciate them. So your love of travel and understanding these artisans and the products they're making, how's that connection now to where you are in the business today? Like, it's not necessarily just like, selling these gifts and crafts at like gift shops around. Tell me more about the business that you have now.
Sure. I didn't have a storefront. I had a website, and I realized that early on, I thought, well, people will just come to the website and they'll buy. And it took me, I'd say probably a good year to realize that I needed to get out and meet people and talk about the items and also so that they could see them and touch them, because items were of a higher quality. These were not the kinds of things that you would find in the airport or, in some souvenir shops. So I started spending a lot of time in trade shows, vendor shows, fairs, expos. And so after a couple of years, I decided, this wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So I made a shift. And I started then working with individuals and helping them become what I described as more intentional gift givers. So I was working with people who had no clue in terms of gift, what to give somebody, or with people who just didn't like to shop. And so what I found very early on was that the reason most people have a very difficult time, I should say, back up. The reason people who have a difficult time trying to figure out what to give somebody is because they're really not paying attention and listening to the person that they're going to give the gift to, even if it's if it's a husband or a wife. And so because I tell my clients that people will tell you so much about themselves without realizing how much they're telling you. But you have to actively listen and pull out those, nuggets of information that will help you then in terms of determining a gift. The other part is people don't pay attention to what you wear, what kinds of jewelry, women are wearing, or what's around them in their office or what's around them in their home. If they did, then they would get a number of, ideas in terms of, what to give somebody. And an example, so I was talking with my sister over the weekend. We were talking about a book that both of us had read, and then the author had used another book as a reference book. And so my sister said that she was interested in that book, but it was not high on her list. So, she was going to wait. So I went on, Amazon, purchased the book, and that's what I'm going to give her, for Christmas. But again, because I heard what she said. So people who had hardly ever gotten positive feedback all of a sudden became star gift givers, and people were surprised. How did you know that this was my favorite color? How did you know this was my, exactly what I wanted? So some of these clients then came to me and asked if I would help them with a business gift. And so I said, sure. Now, like I did with the individuals, with their, personal gifting, I started asking about their clients. I said, tell me about their interests. Tell me about, do they travel? What sports do they play, or what sports teams do they root for? And I would say almost 100%. The response would be, I have no idea. I have no clue. And which at first I should not have been surprised, taking into account what I had learned, in personal gifting, but I was a bit surprised. So my next question always is, then why do you want to give a gift to somebody who you don't know? And this takes my clients kind of back. They go, what do you mean? We've been doing business together for, X number of years, or we've been strategic, we've been great strategic partners. And so my response is, then you really need to get to know this person. You need to start to build and cultivate a relationship with this person, because he or she obviously is important to your business. So I put together a worksheet, 12 things to know about your customer, gave it to my client, and said, every single time you are going to have a conversation with this particular customer that you want to give a gift to, pick an item off of this worksheet that you're going to find out about them, but you cannot ask them. You have to maneuver the conversation to get the information. So grumble, grumble, grumble. Oh no, I don't know if I can do this. And then I would say, well, then I'm not the person to help you, because, giving a bottle of wine or, something like that, just for me is not a thoughtful gift for anyone. So they did. And so then what they would do is they would start to bring the information or give us the information. And then we would put together 2 or 3 options. They would pick one. We would wrap it, pack it, put in a handwritten note, and ship it for them. And clients started coming back saying, you would not believe the impact that this gift has had on my relationship with my customer. He or she's more responsive. They return my phone calls much faster. They, answer my emails more quickly, or, they've just increased the amount of business we do together, or they've just given me a great referral. So this shows me that most companies have no strategy whatsoever in terms of how to build and cultivate relationships with their existing customers. So this is where we focus our work.
I love that. I mean, so often in the business world, we're looking at books that talk about sales and, client acquisition. Very rarely do we come across people talking extensively about client retention, relationship building. And like you mentioned, there's a huge value there. There's important things of, you're going to have more responsive clients. You're going to get more referrals from these clients. They're going to tell their friends about this amazing gift that this business partner or a colleague sent to them. And that has tangible impacts to your clients' businesses.
You're right. most companies in some ways try to do everything they can not to speak to their customers, and I've had examples of, exact treatment, so to speak, but people are people. And I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's a family member. I don't care if it's friends. I don't care if it's your customers. I don't care if it's your employees. Everybody wants to feel valued and appreciated. And customers, I've done polls on LinkedIn where I ask people, what's your customer retention strategy? And the most frequent response I get is, I give great customer service. And I come back and I say, that's really not a strategy, because that's what is expected. There is not a single company in the world that would say to their clients, I'm going to give you mediocre service. So that is the bar. That is the bar that everybody expects. Now, whether the company meets that bar or not, that's, a completely different story. But there is a statistic out there that says 68% of people stop doing business with a company because they don't feel valued or appreciated for their business, period. So people, they change.
That's powerful.
Yeah, they change companies. They stop doing business with a company. And most of the time they don't tell the company. They just kind of move on, and the company doesn't know why. And so the response is not to go back to that customer and say, look, what happened? What did we do? What didn't we do? How can we improve? Instead, they just say, okay, we'll just get another, we'll get another client to replace that client. And it doesn't exactly work that way. So for companies to focus 100% of their resources on acquisition of new customers cannot grow, because you're bringing in your customers at the same level. One, they're not increasing the amount of business that they're doing with you. There's another statistic that shows that the longer a customer stays with your business, the more they will spend. Something like they'll spend, 67% more in, year 3 than they would have in year 1. The other statistic too is about, retaining customers is a 5% increase in customer retention has the same impact as, a 10% decrease in costs. So, I mean, right there,
wow.
These
numbers are quite compelling. So, yeah.
So when I was just going
to say that it makes like a strong argument here for, investing in client gifts, because you're going to increase your client retention. You're avoiding that additional client acquisition cost to have to replace them. And you're moving them up the levels of a client. So they're more likely to spend more. They're more likely to pass more referrals to you. So there's a strong, compelling like business investment reason then to treat customers right with these customized gifts.
Right. And I will say, you've said the key word. It's looking at your customers as an investment versus looking at your customers as a cost. And that's, what most companies look at they don't look at their customers as an investment. When we, work with a client, we tell them, the key is to have a consistent strategy in terms of how you're going to stay connected. And it doesn't always have to be a gift, because that's the first thing people think, oh, a gift, this is going to be expensive. No, it can be a handwritten note saying thank you. It can be a gift. It can be a curated article. So as you get to know your customers, you start to get to know their interests. You start to get to know their hobbies. So you can send them an article around a hobby, around maybe they travel, a country that they're going to go to, or a country that they have been. And this is a new restaurant, a new hotel, something along those lines. So it can be an article. It can be just picking up the phone and calling your customer just to say, hey, I just want to find out how you're doing. not anything about business, just checking in. So there's a lot of different ways that you can show your customers that you appreciate them, that will help them to feel valued, and that you look at them as a person rather than as a transaction. And unfortunately, most companies look at their customers as transactions.
Yeah. So you've done a really great job, and thank you so much for explaining, like, there's very clear business investment reasons that, having a clear client appreciation strategy can lead to better returns for a business. You've laid out like key things that are actionable that people can do within that strategy. I'd love to hear more, like some specific examples of like the type of gifts that you've found while you've been doing your travels. So people viewing this can kind of get an idea of like, what are we talking about? Like, what kind of gifts are we looking at here that would be meaningful and impactful and tailored? We're not talking about like Seahawks jerseys or, baseball hats. Like, tell us like what you've found in your travels and the impact they've had on your clients.
Sure. So here's one example. A client came and said that he wanted to give a gift to someone who was a client, but had also been a mentor to him. And so we talked about the person, and again, trying to find out about this person. And so my client had found out that this person collects African masks. So, I did some research. We came up with options that were in his price point, because that's also for us the key. So if you tell me that you want to spend $50 on the gift, then we're going to find something that's in that price point. We're not going to come back to you and say, oh, here's something for $150. So we found a couple of options for him, and he picked the one that he wanted to give, and we wrapped it and put in a note, and he hand delivered it to his client. And so a couple of weeks later, he calls me up and he says, I just want to let you know that I hand delivered the gift, and when my client opened it, he almost started to cry. He said, this is one of the most thoughtful gifts I have ever received. And that's the key, because a couple of things. One is that it was meaningful to his client. It wasn't meaningful to my client. It was meaningful to his client. And unfortunately, a lot of companies, especially at this time of year, the end of the year, when they are thinking about giving gifts to their clients, they think about the gift first and then who they're going to give the gift to, rather than the client, who we're going to give the gift to first, and then figuring out the gifts going to those people. Secondly, is that every single time his client looks at that African mask, he is going to think about my client and his business. And that's exactly why you give a gift, is because you want your client to either use it or have it around. And then the other benefit is somebody walks into his client's office and looks at the mask and says, wow, where did you get this? And his client can then talk about him, my client, their relationship, business that they've done together, all rather naturally than his client feeling like he's, advertising, for my client. So that's one example. And so when a client comes to us and says they'd like to give a gift, sometimes they're the things, and I have, some things here that I have imported, but the other times, because of what the client's interests or hobbies are, it may not fit. So another example, which was very recent, is a client called up and we talked about her client, and it was someone who was going to retire. And so of all the things we talked about, she was really focused on that this woman knitted. And so we put together a bundle that included a tote bag that she could, carry her knitting projects, a beautifully handcrafted, this did come from Thailand, but it was a handcrafted bowl with a special cutout that you put the ball of yarn in so that the yarn can come out without getting tangled. These new kind of knitting needles. I don't knit, so I had to consult with somebody who does knit. And then a gift card to an online yarn store so that then she could buy, yarn. And my client received a beautifully handwritten note from her client, thanking her, telling her that it was one of the most thoughtful gifts that she had ever received, that she felt heard, and that she felt appreciated. And that's what we want. So it takes some time.
That's the kind of lasting impact you want with your clients.
Exactly. So this takes some time, but it's worth it, because it's that kind of a connection that is what is going to be most beneficial to your business. And that's what we're all looking for, ways to stay connected, top of mind with our clients, and ahead of our competition. And I can guarantee you that there are not a lot of companies that are doing this type of, what I call appreciation gestures on a consistent basis.
Yeah. Well, I love what you mentioned earlier with like the African mask, that these types of gifts are conversation starters. It's not just the typical pen or water bottle or coffee mug that like everyone's used to seeing. It's, the swag. Right. It's not these are not conversation starters versus like these unique, thoughtful gifts.
Right. I'm going to get
a conversation with someone. You're going to want to ask, where did you get it?
So two things. I'm going to get one thing. So this piece right here. So this is from Nicaragua, and it's hand thrown. And then what they do is they paint it, and then they go back and etch it with a stylist to create the design. So one of my clients gave something by the same artist to one of her clients. Every single time her client looks at it, she picks up the phone and calls my client just to say, I was just looking at the piece that you gave me, and I just wanted to check in to see how you're doing. Again, like you said, it's not the pen, it's not the Yeti cup, it's not the water bottle. It's something that is meaningful to the client. And I can't stress that enough. And, and don't get me wrong. There's a time and there's a place for promotional products, but you cannot promote your business and thank your clients at the same time with the same product. Immediately, no matter how expensive your promotional product is, and I'll give you an example in a second, it's going to be seen as promoting your business, not thanking you, not you thanking your client. Example, somebody came up to me after I gave a presentation, and he said that he had been given a Coach wallet, but the company had put their logo on the back of it. And he said, I just gave it away. I gave it to the Goodwill, because he says, I'm not going to walk around with somebody else's logo on my wallet.
That makes total sense. You see the Goodwill is loaded with promotional product items all the time.
Yes. And they're not, those are not inexpensive. Yeah. So taking that money that you would spend on a promotional product and giving, and putting it towards a product that is meaningful to your client, so much, a better return on your investment.
Well, Deborah, this has been amazing hearing these stories and examples. I thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. For people that are interested in getting in touch with you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
So my email address is dmyers, MYERS, at VirtuArte, VirtuArte, ARTE.com. So right now, that's the best way. My website is being redone right now, so it's kind of in flux. So I really don't think that's the best way. And one other thing, if you don't mind, is that in February, I will be doing a masterclass on this whole topic: how to increase the 3 R's in 2024: retention, referrals, and revenue. And we'll go into much more depth in terms of what I was talking about. And if they're interested, email me and we will send you a one-pager about the masterclass.
That's awesome. And I think we can get a link to that put in the description for this video episode as well. So thank you, Deborah. This has been wonderful. Everyone that's been viewing, if you want to have your strategy in this coming year, this is a great time to start the new year right with an amazing client appreciation strategy. Get in touch with Deborah and she will help you bring your business level to the next level with your clients. Thank you so much, Deborah.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.